Welcome to Disability and Inclusion Forum on the 8th of September 2025. My name is Lisa Hughes and I will be chairing this meeting. The meeting is being held in person via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. We are not expecting the fire alarm to sound this morning. However, if it does, please may I ask that you leave in an orderly fashion and rendezvous across the road outside the library next to the fountain. Firstly, it would be useful if members and officers could introduce themselves so the public are aware of who is in the meeting and the role that they are undertaking. So my name is Lisa Hughes. I'm a Maidenhead resident with disabilities. I'm also a director at Borough Plant Nurseries and contribute to other disability forums.
Hello, my name is Lizzie Jones. I am Vice Chair and I am a Windsor resident with disabilities and carer.
I'm Catherine Del Campo. I'm one of the councillors on this forum.
I'm Helen Price and I'm another councillor on this forum.
Jatinder Singh Rakwa, Leisure Focused Sports Inclusion and Partnership Manager and a Service User.
Dominic Manley, Maidenhead resident, wheelchair user. Also, I help to run the local MS Society group.
I'm Dennis Jeffrey. I'm a resident of Maidenhead and I have a particular interest here in visual impairment. David Coppinger. I represent Alzheimer Dementia Support, a local charity. Whilst this group mainly talks about physical disability, I want to make sure that disabilities that I look after are equally represented. I understand a lot about the workings of this because I was a counsellor for 12 years with responsibility for adult services 2 occasions. Thank you.
I'm Marion Williams. I'm a Windsor resident. I have an interest in specific learning difficulties.
Hello, I'm Ian Anctiller. I'm a Principal Planning Policy Officer here at the Council.
Hello, I'm Lucinda Pinhorn-Smythe. I am Senior Planning Policy Officer at the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead.
Good morning, I'm Doug Tremellin. I'm the Transport Policy Manager for Borough.
Good morning, my name is Vicky Holt. I'm the Community and Development Manager for Optilus's Community Life Services, supporting adults with learning disabilities in the borough.
Good morning, I'm Ellen McManus-Fry, Qualities and Community Engagement Officer.
Mikey Lloyd, Democratic Service Officer and Clerk to the forum. Just to make us aware, those in the room, we do have a technician this morning that is going to be looking at the audio and sound today. So hopefully if there are any issues, he'll be very quick to hopefully fix them. And as again, obviously all your microphones are live at all times. So it's not a case of pressing it to be in a queue to talk. Once you press it, you will be live on YouTube. So just to make people aware in the room.
Thank you. And if we could go to the people on Zoom to introduce yourself. So Steve.
Yes, good morning everyone, great to be here. My name's Steve Sansom. I work for Age UK Berkshire, overseeing a dementia strategy to lead the Royal Borough to being dementia friendly.
Thanks, Steve. Peter.
Morning everybody, I'm Peter Haley. I'm the Chief Exec of People to Places. We're the local community transport organisation for the Royal Borough.
Thanks, Peter. Kirsty.
Hello, I'm Kirsty. I'm here representing Send Voices RBWM, which is the official parent care forum for Windsor and Maidenhead.
Thank you. Angela.
Good morning. I'm Angela Clark and I represent a service user.
Thank you. Robin?
Good morning, Robin Pemberton, Braywick Heath Nurseries and Berwick Charitable Trust with a particular interest in autism.
Thanks, Robin. Then we have somebody, oh, is that you, Jit? You've got fireflies.ai. Are you on Zoom? No? There is somebody that, it says fireflies.ai. Oh, I see, right. And I think we had somebody else, but they've gone now. So I think that's everyone. Okay, she's not showing on here anymore. Nagina Pazir?
Yeah. Hi, good morning. I'm Nagina Pazir and I work at Manor School in Maidenhead.
Nagina, Sharon Carrigan, I was a long-time member of the forum until she left, so thank you very much. Do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. I would also, no, I don't think I need to say that. So we will move on to the agenda. So firstly, I would like to welcome everybody to this forum. And I found out over the summer that it started 35 years ago as a collaboration between local disabled people, access consultants and council officers. And incredibly, one member, Robin Pemberton, has been a part of it from the start. Over the intervening years, there have been many changes. Acts of Parliament, such as the Disability Discrimination Act, which was later replaced by the Equality Act. We've had changes in local politicians, local political parties, council officers, as well as the groups who support local disabled people, family carers, and those of us with lived experience of disability. There has also been a shift in public and private bodies when it comes to talking with and involving disabled people in designing systems, policies and processes. I've seen it here and with the railways. Change never comes quick enough for those of us who need it, but it is happening. Here in the Borough, we still come together in the spirit of collaboration to improve the accessibility of services, facilities and amenities for disabled people. These often, but don't only, relate to council services, amenities, facilities, etc. We're not here to embarrass or shame any organisation or people, but we will tenaciously pursue important subjects. Publicising the forum in the residents' newsletter in May resulted in several people expressing an interest in becoming a member, and I'm really pleased to welcome David, Kirsty and Marion, as well as a prospective member who is observing on Zoom today. Looking at the people here and on Zoom, there is a real wealth of experience, skills and talent. So thank you for being part of the forum. Lizzie and I have been busy over the summer with background diff work. We've provided elements and suggestions on promoting the accessibility of RBWM meetings. Lizzie researched best practice by councils in providing guidance to planning applicants on the access component of design and access statements, and I drafted a document intended to help ward councillors review the consideration of accessibility within planning applications. A couple of current consultations to let you know about. They're both planning consultations and both finish on September the 30th. These are the local enforcement plan and the national and local validation list. So next item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Mikey.
Yes, Chair. So we have apologies from Sharon Bunt and Louise Sugden. Obviously, if there are any missing through email, because I've been on leave for a week, they will be still included in the minutes.
Thank you. Does anybody have any declarations of interest to make? I take that as a no. So the minutes from the last forum, we know that there are two amendments. One was about replacing Peter Haley's name with replacing Dominic Manley's name with Peter Haley in AOB under talking tables, and then on the same page under AOB, an amendment to the statement that Councillor Del Campo made. Apart from that, does anybody have any other amendments, or can we accept these meetings? So
Can we know what the amendment was for Councillor Del Campo before we say we agree? What it was?
Councillor Del Campo, yes.
Yeah.
So it was in the discussion on in any other business on the Autism Partnership. What the original text says is Councillor Del Campo acknowledged the issue and explained that due to budget constraints, this area fell under discretionary spending. And the suggested text is Councillor Del Campo acknowledged the issue and explained that budget constraints limit what we are able to do on a discretionary basis. That's certainly what I intended to say. So, thank you.
Councillor Price, could you turn your mic? Thank you. I'm happy to accept both those amendments. Does anybody have any other points they would like to raise? No. So we can accept these as being accurate record of the last meeting. Yep. Thanks, Mike. I'll sign those at the end. Yeah. Okay, so the updated terms of reference. So thank you to everybody who provided input and comments to the terms of reference as we exist kind of under the auspices of administration support by the council. We kind of, our terms of reference fit in to the structure and the format suggested and used by the council with other outside bodies. We did send out the updated terms of reference, and I wonder if there are any comments or questions that anyone has over these updated terms. No, I'm not seeing any issues. So again, can I take it that we have agreed the updated terms of reference?
On page 5. On page 5, there's the bit in yellow, and the
yes,
proportion
yes.
or percentage of members. We were going to talk about that.
Thank you, Lizzie. Short-term memory issues. Thank you. So yeah, we proposed that we had a percentage of disabled residents and family carers within, is it the quorum or just the meeting, the membership?
The membership is, it's on the membership point about
Yep.
shall be 10, maximum 20, minimum proportion of, the percentage of members shall be disabled.
So for the people on Zoom, we had within the membership numbers, we had a minimum and a maximum, and then we thought it might be good practice to ensure that we've got a minimum percentage of people who are disabled residents or family carers. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. It would be useful to get your input, and then we can make a decision. I think it probably needs to be above 50%, but not too far above 50%, because we really value the input of groups such as Alzheimer Dementia Support, Age UK, and other groups. So anybody have any thoughts? Yes, Councillor Del Campo.
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts on what the percentage should be, but I trust you to make a decision on that. I would just suggest changing shall be to should be. And that means if for any reason, we don't have the required number of disabled residents, then we can still continue.
Yes, I think that's a useful point. So if I propose a number, being an ex-finance director, something around 55%, how does that sound to, yeah. So yes, Dennis.
Can I ask how someone like myself would be categorised? Because I have AMD, but I'm working with two organisations in the borough to try to represent a broader range of visual impairment. And would I be categorised as an individual or as a representative? Just as an example.
Thank you. I think it's obviously a valid point, but if you are a resident with disabilities, you're a resident with disabilities. I guess if you are paid as somebody from Berkshire Vision, then that may change things slightly, but I still think you can be counted as a resident with disabilities. Yes, Dom.
What is the current percentage?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Did you say you proposed 50%, did you say?
I said 55%.
55. Very precise. Where does that?
It's a number.
I'd suggest a minimum of 30%. 50% would be great. We ought to calculate the current number, though.
Yes, yeah, we can do
Just as a
that
guide.
afterwards. I don't know if anybody on Zoom, Angela, Robin, Kirsty, have any thoughts on that? Yes, Angela.
I tend to agree with Dominic. Thank you.
Kirsty?
I just wanted to go back to the point about intersectionality, where people might represent more than one group. So, for example, I myself have a disability, but I'm also a parent carer. So it might be worth trying to like see what happens if you group that percentage with your intersectionality as well.
Thanks, Kirsty. Yeah, I mean, maybe it is too defining to have a particular number, and I think yes, we'll take this away and look at the intersectionalities and just look at the matrix of that, and it's just a case of making sure that disabled people are in the room and contributing and making their voices heard. So happy to not have a percentage, but to kind of make a statement around that. So with that in mind, is everyone in agreement with the rest of the terms of reference? I'll take, sorry, Dom.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's a very thorough, professional looking document, and thank you, Chair and Vice Chair.
Thank you also to Ellen and to Democratic Services for that. But yeah, good piece of work, and I think it really does spell out what we do and how we do it. So we had an update on the actions around the emergency evacuation procedure and Town Hall health and safety. So this is more to note the report. I saw that quite a few of the actions have already taken place. I don't know people's experiences of coming into the meeting this morning. The reception staff were a bit hesitant about whether I should sign in and be given a visitor badge. I was, but they were a bit unsure, so I think there's maybe a bit more kind of bedding in and training to be done on that. Were there any other questions that anyone had or points? Yes, Don.
Well, I asked and they brought out the sign-in sheet straight away. It seemed to be no hesitation. So I think a lot of work has been done on this clearly in since the last meeting, and things are definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so there were a couple of outstanding actions on that, so it'd be good to maybe just circle back on this in December and see if the personal emergency evacuation procedures are in place. So I would like to welcome Lucinda, who's going to talk about the draft Maidenhead Town Centre Shopfront Supplementary Planning document, thank you, discussion. So thanks, Lucinda.
Thank you very much. Sorry, for some reason I wasn't able to share on my screen, so Ian's going to share for me.
Just bear with me a minute. It's not bringing up your presentation. Let me save it. To just start.
Yes, so while Ian's doing that, so today I was grateful to be able to speak to you to highlight that this is an SPD that is hopefully going to go to Cabinet on the 30th of September to approve the going out to consultation for it. So it's really to highlight that in early October to mid-November, we're hopefully going to be consulting on a new shopfront SPD, so that will be shopfronts specifically in Maidenhead. And I just wanted to highlight it to people on the forum, because obviously this has quite important sort of implications, not just for physical disabilities, but things like autism as well, how people experience the town centres and how they experience the shops and how they access them as well. So this, it's still going through the process to get approval for consultation, but because your next meeting isn't till December and the consultation would have finished by then, it's just really to put it in your sort of psyches, and so that you can perhaps help me spread the word a bit further and make sure that the right people are aware and feeding back, because it's going to be quite crucial, the feedback that we receive on it.
Thank you. Would you be able to just give an overview of what a supplementary planning document is and where it fits into kind of overall planning?
Yes, so you'll have the main borough local plan. So you have the national guidance, which is the national planning policy framework, and then we have our own local, locally applied policies, which is our borough local plan. And in the borough local plan, we have a policy, I believe off the top of my head, it's TR3, which relates to Maidenhead town centre, and the shopfronts have a multifaceted purpose. So in the TR3, it's referring to the vitality and the vibrancy and the economic function of Maidenhead High Street. But as I've said, it's not just the vitality and vibrancy in terms of the economic function, but it's also how visitors, residents are using them, and how they feel about these spaces as well. So this supplementary planning document, it provides an extra layer of guidance to support policy TR3 as to how we can achieve that ultimate goal that's set out in policy TR3 to achieve this vibrant and accessible town centre in Maidenhead.
Thank you.
So shopfront guidance is important to ensure that new and replacement shopfronts in Maidenhead Town Centre deliver high quality shopfronts that contribute positively to the character and vitality of Maidenhead Town Centre and support policy TR3 of the Borough Local Plan. We do have an existing Maidenhead business and shopfront design guide, but this dates from August 2013. And whilst it still contains a lot of useful information that will be carried forward into the new supplementary planning document, there are some areas where best practice has moved on, and the new SPD will also include references to sustainability, because that is also an area that has moved on a bit since 2013. So in terms of lighting, building materials, where you can reuse rather than replace, things like that. So the Cabinet members, including the leader, were very keen for us to progress with this SPD, but it wasn't in our initial programme of work, because with our attention now turning to a new local plan, there was a drive in the policy team to wrap up all of our SPD work and focus our resources on the new local plan programme and preparation. So in light of these constrained resources, an opportunity arose to produce the SPD in collaboration with Sorbonne Estates, who offered to help the council develop the new guidance for the shopfronts in Maidenhead Town Centre. And with the input of Sorbonne, we were able to progress this as an extra SPD with reduced officer resources. So we've set up a working group with officers from planning, conservation team and the town centre manager, as well as the Sorbonne managing director. And we've held an early engagement workshop in May with a range of local stakeholders, including some ward members, the Nicholson Centre manager, the Maidenhead Civic Society. That's just the ones I can remember off the top of my head, but there were a few people in the room. And due to the nature of the private-public collaboration in developing this new shopfront guidance, it was decided to bring the document forward as an SPD. The other guidance is just guidance, it's not an SPD, but we thought bringing this forward as an SPD gave it greater transparency and public scrutiny, you know, given it's being developed in a public-private partnership. It's intended that the document will be separated into 5 sections. Each section will include visual examples of the principles being discussed in order to make the document more accessible to a wider audience, and will also include a series of checklists to aid the usability of the document. The new document will cover similar content to the existing guidance. However, it will be updated to incorporate current best practice, sustainability considerations, and is intended to be a more visual document to make it more accessible to a wider audience, with lots of photo examples to illustrate the principles described. The key content will include guidance on how to appraise a shopfront and decide whether it can or should be restored, or whether replacement would be more appropriate. Where replacement is considered to be more appropriate, the document will include guidance on how to consider the shopfront in the context of the street scene and the host building, and not just a feature in isolation. The guidance will be updated to include current best practices for inclusive design and accessibility. And this is really where I'm calling for your input when it does get to public consultation, just to make sure that it's being scrutinised, to make sure that we've got the right things covered in the document. It will be a very visual guide to explain a visual guide will be provided to explain the different aspects of a shopfront, and photo examples included to demonstrate best practice for the design principles behind each element of the shopfront. As I said, we're hoping to take it to the 30th of September Cabinet to seek approval to go to consultation. The public consultation will take place in early October and run to the middle of November. Then once we've received that feedback, it will be incorporated into the document itself. And then we are hoping because of our programme, as I set out at the beginning, to adopt it in early 2026. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much for bringing that to us, and wholeheartedly agree that thinking about inclusive design goes beyond just mobility, but also visual impairment. And it was interesting to see you're talking about the shopfront in relation to the streetscape, and I think having that contrast between surfaces to enable people with both cognitive impairment and also visual impairment to be able to navigate the space and into the shops is really important. So I couldn't see it on there, but actually thinking about the floor surfaces and wall surfaces to make sure that they're coherent for neurodiverse and other impairments. Does anybody else have any? So, yes, Angela.
I just wondered what your powers were for improvement. I'm thinking particularly of a premises at the end of St Ives Road, opposite Stanley Peak, which frankly is, you know, not representing Maidenhead's High Street in any way. And I just wonder what powers you have to formally make improvements there.
So we don't have powers to actually intervene and physically do the improvements. This is just putting the guidance in place so that when someone is carrying out works in the town centre, that they've actually got a very clear set of guidance of what is good practice, what's best practice, how it should be approached. And so it gives a greater, hopefully will give a greater clarity of what the expectations would be.
Thank you. Angela, you still have your hand raised. Is it okay? Thank you. David.
Thank you. You speak about preserving the old shop fronts. One of the issues with shop fronts, the old ones, is they tend to have steps. In fact, I would think that virtually all of them have steps. How are you going to balance your requirement with the requirement of the people we represent?
That's a really good point. And actually, this is why it's important that I came to you today, because actually that wasn't something that was on my radar. So that's why it's crucial that we get this feedback. So I will take that point away and I will have a conversation with our conservation officer because there will have to be points of flexibility and negotiation, and that's clearly a point that needs to be considered.
Any other questions, comments? No. Councillor Delcampo.
Thank you. Yeah, just given that the ask presumably is that members of this forum take part in the consultation, I'm probably looking at Mikey actually. Can we just get an email out to members when the consultation goes live? I know it will be going out all over the place, but it's useful to have that nudge, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, also to ensure that people are not digitally excluded in that consultation as well. But thanks very much. That was really helpful and useful. So thanks for coming along. Feel free to stay, feel free to leave. Next, this is a presentation on where we're at with the Borough local plan. So welcome to Ian, and hopefully the PowerPoint will load a bit easier than the last one did. So thank you.
Thought it was going to work. Sorry, bear with us just for a second. There. Strange.
That's strange because you just shared my one.
It's
So
a
how
shared
does-
one.
Yeah, how does that? Is that understand?
Sorry?
We're at shared listeners that way.
No, she
No,
couldn't
Ian
work on
had
the
to share
cylinders.
for me.
Sorry about this, folks. Don't know.
So for all the people on Zoom, we're just trying to sort the IT issues. So we haven't disappeared. Please bear with us.
I think we're there now.
Okay. Please present.
Great. Many apologies for that. Move on to the next slide, Mikey. Thank you. So yes, I'm Ian Manctillo. I'm the Principal Planning Policy Officer in the Planning Policy team at the Royal Borough, which oversees not just the production of SPDs that Lucinda's been talking about, but also its key role going forward will be about reviewing the borough local plans. So this is by way of, so a little bit of an introduction really to the local plan and why we're doing it. You'll be hearing a lot more about this in the future, but we're right at the very start of the process and just thought it'd be helpful to come along this morning and just, I suppose, share the challenge and just perhaps get your initial thoughts and feedback as to how the forum can be involved as we go through what will be a relatively lengthy process to produce a local plan. So I'll start by just explaining what a local plan is and what it does. So a local plan is really about identifying where new development and growth takes place across the borough. It has a minimum sort of 15-year time horizon, so it's quite long term in its sort of thinking, and it sets out really the vision for that growth and tries to identify specific objectives that we then get followed through into specific policies in the plan, and also specific sites that will be identified in the plan, primarily for housing growth, but also commercial development of various forms. So it sets out where they should be, identifies those on plans like the one you can see on the screen, and actually provides some more detail about how those individual sites should be developed as well. It identifies areas that should be protected from development. Then it also looks at what's the infrastructure that needs to be provided to support growth in terms of the development that's planned in what is a 15-year plan. And the final sort of element of a local plan really are some more detailed policies that aim to secure quality development. And that's perhaps partly again where the forum comes in looking at some of those detailed policies and how they can address your particular sort of areas of concern and interest. So you may remember, just moving on, Mikey, may remember the current borough local plan. It was a long time in the making. David Croft is smiling, having been very closely involved in it in his councillor days. It was adopted in February 2022. So what, 3.5 years old now. It planned for around 15,000 homes over a 20-year period and other development as well. I had a time horizon to 2033, and I suppose we were thinking, okay, it's only 3 years old. It's got quite a long shelf life still. You don't need to normally worry about reviewing plans for at least 5 years. But then actually things change, and they certainly change in the planning world, and you'll have heard a lot from the government nationally about planning reform, and in particular about its target of wanting to deliver 1.5 million homes across the country over the next 5 years, over the lifetime of the current parliament, and seeing that as a means not just to delivering homes, but delivering economic growth for the economy nationally. So we've seen some major planning reforms come through, something called the National Planning Policy Framework. The NPPF was reviewed at the end of last year with some significant changes that particularly affect how housing is delivered, and also how we calculate the way or calculate what's called the local housing need, which is really the basis of what our housing target should be as a borough going forward. So that changed at the end of last year, and there's been a lot of change and policy changes around the green belt, and needing to potentially review green belts, which include most of this borough, to find more land for development. So just moving on, Mikey, and on to the next slide. So this is the real challenge that we face in terms of house building. So at the moment, we're probably building over the last 10 years or so about 500 homes a year. The requirement in the borough local plan was for just over 700 a year, and that's over quite a long period from 2013 to 2033. So in the early years of the lifetime of the current plan, we were been building at a lower rate than the plan required. So we then have to kind of play catch up now. So there's something called the 5-year housing land supply or five-year housing requirement. You can see that's a lot higher now to make up some of the early shortfalls and provide a bit of contingency as well. So that's nearly 1,200 homes a year that we need to be providing for now. Our current supply of sites doesn't get us that far. We get about a 4-year supply when we're meant to have a 5-year supply. And then when you use this new formula from government to calculate our housing needs and our requirements going forward, then it goes up even further to just over 1,400 homes a year. So you can see this escalating requirement for housing. And I think the view that we took basically was that we can't just sit and let this happen. We've got to actually go ahead and plan for it. So if we can just move on to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So really it's about preparing a new local plan earlier than we were probably expecting to do because of this big challenge on the housing numbers in particular. So that involves identifying new sustainable locations for growth, probably looking up to about the year 2045. So I talked about a 15-year plan. Well, that's 15 years from when we adopt the plan, which won't be for a few years yet anyway. And it could involve finding land for maybe up to another 20,000 homes on top of what the local plan already plans for. So some of that's been built. Quite a lot of that has now got planning permissions or planning applications in the pipeline for those local plan sites. We may need as much as another 20,000 on top of that to get to hitting those requirements long term up to 2045. So what's been agreed so far? What's happened so far? Well, so there's been agreement within the council to prepare a new local plan. This is back at council's cabinet earlier in the year, and the government asked us to come up with a timetable, and also part of what the planning reforms are doing is to try and accelerate massively, really, the programme for preparing local plans. So the last plan took many, many years. We're expecting now to try and produce a plan in 30 months, so 2.5 years. So it's quite a different timescale that we're looking at here. So the timetable that we agreed earlier in the year is trying to fit a local plan into that 30-month timetable, with some early preparation work happening this year and the start of next year. A formal start of that sort of 30-month period in May next year, running through to adoption towards the back end of 2028. Now, the sort of fly in the ointment here is that to do this and to work on these timescales, we need new legislation and policy and guidance from government to be finalised. Basically, a new plan making system is due to come in, but it's not there yet. So the timetable we produced was somewhat indicative and dependent on seeing the new system come through from government, and it's fair to say that has been delayed. So we're going to have to keep this one under review. But the intention still is to get going with the plan. What we can't do is do that formal start, which is currently scheduled in May 2026, until we have everything in place for government first. Otherwise, it could be a false start, which we obviously don't want to do. Just move on to the next one. So many challenges, but opportunities as well, I think, in preparing a new plan. So yes, the challenges are gathered around the timescales and it being very tight. Technically challenging, we have to produce a lot of evidence to support the plan that we prepare. And I think critical around that is having a plan that's deliverable, so seeing sites and development that will actually come forward and not get massively delayed, so we can hit those targets. And we know from the current plan that these things are controversial, and we'll have to work through that as part of preparing the plan. On the other hand, there's some opportunities here, not least delivering on council and wider community sort of aspirations for the borough as a whole, and a whole range of aspirations in terms of what we want to achieve as a council and as a wider community, but also a chance to produce something that's more up to date as a plan, easier to use, I suppose more accessible, probably more digital as well in terms of its approach. And using more and new up-to-date tools and techniques in terms of preparing that plan, and in terms of public engagement and how we present the plan. Can it be presented clearly and more accessibly for people? So just finally, really, just areas really for you to think about and sort of feedback on. As I said, we're very much at the early stages, really at the project planning stage at the moment. And we'd like to hear your thoughts on how you can be involved in the process, because we want to come back as things develop and share the emerging thinking on the plan and the work that's going on. But your thoughts on how we can reach and involve a wider range of sort of groups and interests as part of preparing the plan. So it's really more inclusive approach to community engagement. And then as we actually put the plan together, then how can we ensure that we locate development in the most accessible locations, for instance, the site-specific requirements that we may set out for those individual sites. How can we ensure that they will deliver high quality and accessible developments and environments? And when we get to the drafting of more detailed policies that will shape basically all the planning applications that we consider, then again, how can we ensure those policies address the needs of disabled people and promote inclusive design and accessibility in sort of all aspects of development. So a few things to kind of think about, perhaps for some initial feedback, and obviously as the plan develops and the work develops, it'll be good to come back and share more with you. So apologies again for the technical problems, but hopefully that was helpful at the introduction.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ian. It's really good to learn about the borough local plan at this early stage, and to be able to think about how we feed back and have meaningful input into this borough local plan. Yeah, I have very painful memories of years of kind of campaigning, advocating for a greater percentage of homes, new homes, to be built as accessible, adaptable, or wheelchair accessible. So yeah, being able to influence things from the start rather than trying to retrospectively achieve change is really welcome. So Councillor Price.
Thank you. I was involved in the last borough local plan in the community group where we tried to put things forward and suggestions, and we spent years and a lot of time. Now I'm a councillor, I can look at it differently and realise that actually there were things that we can't change. That's dictated by government policy, and it would have been fairer on all of us if we'd been told, look, this is the reality of it. You can't change this, you can't change that, but you can influence this and you can influence that. We wouldn't have wasted our times and felt incredible frustration about it. So if something could be put out to explain the realities of the situation we're in, which we might not like, but that's the way it is, so that people have got an understanding and won't waste their effort and time trying to change things that in fact will never ever be changed because the central government has said this is the way it is. So that's just my plea.
Thank you. That's really helpful comment actually. And one of the kind of early stages of work is, even actually before we kind of formally launch the plan making process, is to, I suppose, raise awareness of what we're about to do really, which is something we're planning to do early next year. So with the community, with stakeholders, and I think that sort of early dialogue, you know, is as you say, a useful opportunity really to start to set out what you can and can't influence really, because you're right in saying that a lot is set down in legislation or in government policy. But there is some flexibility around there, but you know, we have to steer quite a careful course, because at the end of the day, we produce a plan, but that plan is goes to an independent planning inspector to examine it, and ultimately that inspector effectively has the final say on the final content of the plan. So we have to produce a plan that we know is going to work with the planning inspector, basically. But thank you, that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I mean, on the housing front, so the current mandatory requirements around accessibility are in the approved building regulations document M, and it says that the mandatory requirement is what is called visitable, and it has some really basic accessible features in it, but it doesn't actually allow somebody with a variety of disabilities to actually live in the property, get access to it, get access to all areas to it. The next level up is called accessible and adaptable, and the Conservative government, the last Conservative UK government, carried out a consultation exercise and reached a conclusion that this mandatory standard should be raised to accessible and adaptable, but they didn't enact it, and so far the Labour government haven't enacted it. So if to achieve things beyond that is possible, and we, after 2 planning inspections, got to 30% of new homes here to be built where there is a development of 20 or more homes, 30% of homes would be built to the accessible and adaptable level, and then a further 5% as wheelchair accessible. Some other councils have gone further, and it would be useful to kind of consider the fact that actually only 7% of homes have any of these very basic visitable standards. So unless we start building everything now, more and more people, as they age and naturally acquire disabilities, people will be living in accommodation that can't meet their needs. And why should somebody have to just move out of their home because building standards at a higher than mandatory level weren't included in a local plan? Yes, David.
I wish you well. What I don't understand is we tried very hard not to use Greenbelt plan in the current plan. However, with this plan, you will have absolutely no choice in using Greenbelt, which means the building will be further and further away from the towns. My concern, as well as yours, is what about will people get around when we have a relatively poor transport system? How will they get to the shops? How will they get to medical facilities? There is so much that will need to work for it to be successful. I don't know how you're going to do it. Good luck.
I don't know quite how we'll do it yet at the moment. That's one of the things to work out, but possibly with a bit of help from Doug actually. And but the wider point is the infrastructure point really there. And it is a good point that there clearly will need to be more, dare I say, outward expansion of towns and villages, and you need the infrastructure to go with it, and particularly the transport infrastructure. So that is a big challenge, and the infrastructure planning part of the evidence that we'll need to prepare will be really critical to make sure that when we put the lines on the plan, so to speak, in terms of identifying sites, then we identify quite clearly what those infrastructure requirements are that will frankly make it acceptable, and that then need to get carried forward into the planning applications that developers submit to make sure that it is genuinely delivered, because I think that's a genuine concern that you have there. Could you just quickly comment on the accessibility standards, the M4 2 and M4 3? Obviously you're right that government haven't implemented what they said they were going to do, and that was through the building regulations. One of the other changes that government are bringing forward on the planning side is what's called national development management policies. So some of those detailed policies I was talking about that we normally put in the plan might end up being prescribed, if you like, at a national level. So I'd be interested to see whether there is anything around the accessibility standards that are set down nationally. Now, to me, the best solution is to put it in the building regs. It could be they take a step back and put it in national development management policies. I don't know, but it's one of those things we'll keep an eye on. But it would be right anyway for us to review the standards in the BLP as part of reviewing the plan as a whole.
Thank you. Is there a date when these policies, the national development management policies, are expected, or is it just like watch this space?
Yeah, earlier in the year is the answer. So we were expecting them earlier this year. I suspect we'll see a draft come out probably at some point in the autumn for consultation. So, but obviously what we're not meant to do in a local plan is then replicate policies in the national development management policies, put those in the local plan as well. They're there to kind of cover all local authorities, if you like.
Thank you. I can see Kirsty has a hand up, but yeah, Councillor Del Campo.
I'm happy to be on first name terms. Thank you. Yeah, I think you touched on my first question, really, which was, for me, you probably understand this better than I do, but just understanding, what can we reasonably ask of developers over and above the minimum standards that they can implement in a, you know, that's not going to cripple them, but is going to be beneficial. And I'm not suggesting we only look at low-hanging fruit, obviously, you know, we need to deal with the complicated issues as well. But I think that would be really useful to understand at this early stage, you know, what, and I think you touched on it with talking about what, you know, what other boroughs are doing. I think that would be a really useful discussion to have. My second point was, you mentioned a 30-month time frame for this, which is very short compared to the previous one. And my concern is that, you know, we don't manage to engage as fully as we want to because we are under these time constraints. And we're on 3-month time cycles with this forum. So if we were only to update every 3 months, that might not be frequent enough. So I suppose I just want to understand, you know, what can we do between meetings to sort of keep the momentum going and make sure that, you know, we are engaging in a meaningful way in the process.
I'm wondering on that last point, looking at Ellen and Mikey, if there were any developments that happened kind of in between meetings, whether they could be circulated, you know, from Ian and then out to the DIF membership. I'm seeing some nodding here, so we can certainly have a look at that. Kirsty.
Hi, my statement was to answer about the transport issue in terms of accessibility. So I'm sure you're all aware there's people to places, which all of their drivers are thoroughly trained on accessibility and being able to help with people who need to go places. If there is a way, perhaps the council could liaise with people to places to make sure that that is put in place for people who need to have the transport from these new developments.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Yeah, certainly be good to liaise with them, and yeah, we'd want to liaise with as wide a sort of range of providers of transport in its various forms as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Peter, you had your hand up and then you put it down. Is there something you'd like to say?
Hi there. Yes, there was something, but I'm afraid I've got to go and deal with the customer at the moment. So, but obviously there's going to be plenty of time over the coming years to contribute to that. So I'm afraid I'll have to leave it for the moment.
Okay, thank you, Peter. He's multitasking at Shop Mobility in Windsor at the moment. Were there any other questions or points? No? Thanks very much. That's really useful, and we look forward to kind of contributing to the development of the BRP. Thanks very much. So, as I said to Lucinda, you're very welcome to stay. You're very welcome if you would like to leave. So next we have an update on the local transport plans. I'd like to welcome Doug. I haven't seen you for a while, Doug, so welcome to the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me back. Good afternoon to you all. So this is about the local transport plan and the development thereof. A local transport plan in many ways is the local plan's little sibling. It serves a very similar purpose, but thinking about not just where things are located, but how people get between the new locations and obviously the existing locations they need to get between. So the work will involve a stock take of our existing network and assets and services, and thinking about where we're foreseeing things changing, which could be through borough local plan. So it'd be very helpful to be developing these in conversation with each other, which we're planning to do. Setting objectives for how we think things need to change or be what we need to be prepared for. Understanding what cases there are for investment and change, and closing the gap. So what policy positions might the council need to take, and what investment is needed. The current local transport plan runs through to 2026. So a new local transport plan is in development. And a bit like a borough local plan, we're probably looking at sort of a 15 plus year timeframe for that. The council has consulted previously on a vision and some thematic areas for the local transport plan. So that will be informing the drafting of what we're doing at the moment. And now we're gathering evidence to understand the performance of our existing networks and services, as we said. So I'd be really glad to have comments from the forum today that will help us with gathering that understanding at this early stage in development of the work. So really interested in bringing in your experiences of travelling around Borough. So if I may, Chair, I've sort of got an open question, which would be, let's get the exact wording up here. So one of the draft aims that we think will be in the local transport plan is our streets and services are welcoming and accessible to all. So I'd really welcome the forum's comments on that statement to bring our attention to things that you think we need to understand or consider as part of working towards that end. That aim. We'll consider those comments during the development of the plan. Grateful for any comments in the room today. Also grateful for people to take that sort of question away, and we can hear from you over the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Doug. So the local transport plan, to be clear, it's a statutory requirement of the Local Transport Act, and it's a key mechanism for delivering integrated transport. So I think since the last local transport plan, we've had the Department for Transport's Inclusive Mobility guide, which is shows best practice on access to pedestrian and transport infrastructure. And there is also, I didn't know this, so I learnt something new over the weekend. British Standard BSEN 17-10, the accessibility and usability of the built environment. So the first one, inclusive mobility, that's a really great document. It goes into lots of detail about accessibility kind of throughout transport and pedestrian environments. And the British Standard has functional requirements, describe the basic minimum functional requirements and recommendations for accessible, usable built environment following universal design principles. It will facilitate impartial and safe practice for a wide range of users, including disabled people. I had a question, Doug, on kind of what are the timelines for this? When are you hoping that this might be adopted?
Thank you very much. I'm hoping we'll be able to get a good draft available for comment towards the end of this calendar year. It could just poke into the next year as well. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is make sure we've got something widely agreed in place to replace the local transport plan sometime within 2026.
Thanks very much. One of the frustrations that I see and encounter quite a lot is something small for a lot of non-disabled people, but dropped curbs with tactile paving. I mean, it's so frustrating. Where I live, there are bus stops that actually, if you needed a crossing to get to and from, you're having to walk about half a mile to find a dropped curb. And it just, it puts people off going out, trying to get to the local station. Again, pavements are just a massive issue, and not just around mobility impairment, but visual and cognitive impairment as well. So that's kind of, yeah, very basic pavements. So I think Angela had her hand up first. So
Yes, thank you. Just looking at your summary, our streets and services are welcoming and accessible to all. The areas that I really consider investment should be made are the diabolical pavements in the High Street and Queen Street. They're made of yellow bricks, and if you have a visual impairment, they are extremely dangerous. I would like anyone today to walk from Harrington's Hairdressers to the corner of Queen Street, where there's an estate agent, and just look at the state of the pavement there. You know, if you are physically impaired, you walk with a stick, it's a trip hazard. So I really need investigation into the state of these yellow brick pavements, please.
Thanks, Angela. Councillor Price?
Yes, I did my little list and some of them have been said already. But we have paths where, because it's built on clay and the clay slips, the gaps now in the paths are that wide. So if you have a wheelchair, your wheel actually drops into it. If you have a walking stick, it could be in there and you could trip, but I can't get them repaired. We have pavements that is the safe way for people in wheelchairs to get around, which they can't use because they're overgrown by shrubbery. We can't get the shrubbery cut back. So there's a whole host of things that make it really difficult. We have in Windsor, the infrastructure of the sewage and the lighting and everything has to be replaced. So we've got workmen around. They don't always take away their barriers. So if you're in a wheelchair trying to go along a path, you find that they're left there even when the work's been completed. We also have bins on bin day, that if the bins aren't put back to the side, there isn't enough room for somebody who's a wheelchair user to actually stay on the pavement. So there's a whole host of things that each one by itself is very little, but when you actually put it together, it's a real challenge for somebody who has some form of impairment, getting around safely. And so, yes, there is a long list. And also when we do have repairs, there needs to be warning before somebody knows they've got to cross to the other side of the road in good time. And they need to have that warning where there is a drop curb, which could be somewhere away, rather than get there, realise that they can't use the pavement, and then they have to go all the way back to find the nearest drop curve to go round. So that is an easy-ish thing to do, but I think would be very helpful. And I'm sure I haven't covered half of the stuff that could be done to make it welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty.
Hi, so just talking from the parent carer side of things, we know already that there's a lot of issues going on with transport to schools and things like that for SEND children. But from our parents, personally, we've been told that they have a lot of issues with the actual drivers of the taxis that are taking the children. Apparently, some of them are not well enough trained to deal with SEND situations. And I just wanted to know if this was going to be addressed in the transport plan.
Thank you. Doug, I don't know if you have an answer.
Thank you very much. So thank you to yourself, Lisa, Angela, and yourself, Councillor Price, for the some comments there on things for us to focus on. So I've noted those down, and I recognise everything that you've said there. And then to yourself, Kirsty, the home to school transport tends to be looked after just in terms of the way we organise ourselves as a council through our children's services unit, but very happy to pass that comment on to them, because we do try and have a one front door policy. So thanks for raising it.
Thank you, Peter, and then
Thank you. Apologies for earlier. You're right, I was multitasking. In fact, the point I wanted to make now is the one I was going to say when Ian was speaking. For a long time, RBWM has been at or very close to the bottom of public transport league tables for the whole of England. And I just wanted to ask really, is there some policy shift that's going to happen here, where we're expecting more public transport to be available or more transport to be provided to take pressure off of car driving. Obviously, there's the debate going on at the moment with regards to Maidenhead Town Centre and the public available car parking there. But is that just a symptom of a broader easing off of provision for cars and a greater emphasis on other means of transport?
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Really good question. We've been aware that we have been, I think, second from bottom of the league table nationally, you're quite right, in terms of bus use specifically. And that's a real shame. If you look to our near neighbours, perhaps Bracknell and Woking, for example, they have much higher rates of bus use per head. We've been working on that for some time. And actually the new bus contracts that came in April, we've really tried to use that as an opportunity to address some of the kind of the underlying structural issues which we think might have been behind that really low use, which is effectively, is there a bus going where you need it to go when you need to go? It's really early doors so far in terms of looking at what success we've had. I do think the early numbers are relatively encouraging, but no doubt there's much more to do. We're all ears in terms of getting ourselves, not just off the bottom of the table, but right up there as well, because it is going to be really important for accessibility around the borough, helping to meet the housing targets, and tackle congestion and so forth. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Strikes me that, for a transport plan to be effective, then it relies on various parts, including third-party organisations. And I'm thinking of, for example, when the lifts were not working at Maidenhead Station, and that had a particular impact on people with disabilities who needed to take quite significant detours. Will this plan give us any sort of levers to ensure that things like that don't happen in the future?
That's a really good question. I think there is different councils approach the local transport plan in different ways. So we have a bit of a choice there. We can definitely focus on the things that are in our direct control, and that probably should be in there. Some councils do use it as an opportunity to take a kind of a position on certain issues. And for things which have been causing a headache for some time, maybe that's something we would want to include in there. Doesn't mean we can deliver it, but it does add weight that the council's written down in a fairly meaningful document, that this is something that's important to people. I'd add as well, it's really, we will be developing this in partnership with transport providers beyond ourselves, people like Great Western Railway in that instance. So there's an opportunity as well in preparing this document to have another dialogue with them about those issues.
With another hat on, so I know GWR, but we've also got Southwest and what was South Western Railway in Windsor. A lot of the infrastructure is actually Network Rail, and over the past 2 years, there has been a real sea change in engagement with disabled people and other passenger groups from Network Rail. And so at the monthly GWR meeting, accessibility meeting that I attend, we quite often have Network Rail coming along. At our last meeting, we were privy to a document that's still really in its draft form, where the government and the Department for Transport is looking at, as train operating companies are taken into public ownership, how do you ensure that accessibility, not only of, say, the station infrastructure, but rolling stock and kind of everything that goes around it, so passenger assistance app. So how does that migrate to ensure that you've still got local inputs? Because there is a committee called the Disabled Persons Transport Advisory Committee that's been going since 1986, which I kind of think, looking at the state of accessibility on the railway, after 40 odd years, things need to change. But again, there is much more evidence of willingness to engage at an early stage, so we can only kind of be hopeful in that. And so kind of quite how that mechanism works between our local transport plan here, but also kind of, yeah, national infrastructure and stuff like that. Yeah, it'd be an interesting one. I can see if I can talk to contacts in Network Rail and kind of see how that might work in practice, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, Catherine.
Sorry, just another small point. I think because we're at the beginning of the process, and probably not everyone has all the knowledge that Lisa has, for example. It'd be really helpful if we could just expand the briefing note a little bit, just to explain, you know, what the aims of the transport plan are, what sort of things do go into the plan, what's outside the scope. For example, I wouldn't necessarily have known that tactile paving could form a part of that plan. So is it possible, you know, I'm not asking for a massive document, it's really just a paragraph or two, just to say what's in the scope and what isn't.
Thank you.
I'm sure I can share that around and perhaps share it afterwards through the forum. Would that be good? Yeah.
Thank you. And obviously this will come back to the forum as things develop. Any other questions or points for Doug? No? Thank you very much. Again, feel free to stay, feel free to leave. Sorry to the people online. We were going to have a verbal update on the Autism Partnership from Kate Concannon. She can't be with us. I understand that she has provided some information to Ellen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Kate sends her apologies. There was an unavoidable clash, but she has offered to come to the next meeting, which I'll have more to update on. But she's given me some information in terms of kind of current status of the autism strategy and the Autism Partnership Board. So Kate and Kevin McDaniels have met with previous members of the Autism Partnership Board and are keen to re-establish the group. They're also seeking to review the autism strategy, and they've put a date in for a first workshop that's going to happen to kind of start discussions around that with some stakeholders. And she sent me the kind of information that has been shared. So I believe this kind of went out to people who had previously contributed to RBWM's autism strategy and also members of the Autism Partnership Board. So this email is drawing attention to an initial workshop, which is taking place on the 23rd of October. And with the aims to reflect on the current strategy and its impact, to identify priorities for improvement, to co-develop an action plan for the next phase, and to explore how the Partnership Board can best support the implementation of the strategy. So this is an invite for people's experience and insights to kind of feed into this early stage. So I'll share the kind of information that Kate has given to me kind of after this meeting. And she said if there's anyone at the forum this morning who would like to be involved, to please kind of let her know. So she's got an idea of numbers for the day. Also, if there's anybody who would like to be involved but would prefer not to take part in workshop style meetings, to kind of get in touch, and then she can look at best ways to engage with them on an individual basis. A few other kind of updates around adult social care. So we've joined the Social Care Futures community of support that we can invite residents who are working with us to access and attend sessions. I believe there's a timetable for the 25-26 sessions that Kate will be able to share. And they are also going out to recruit for a permanent principal social worker and principal occupational therapist. And both of these roles will be pivotal in our transformation programme, Living Well Together. And they'll be looking at improving co-production in adult social care at RBWM. So yes, that's the update, and again, she sends her apologies for not being able to be here in person.
Thank you. Are you able to see on that, not necessarily individual participants in the previous partnership board? No, it would just be useful to know if some of the current kind of community groups have been contacted around that. So yeah, I can ensure through probably through Robin that contact details are provided. Kirsty, I can see you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, just to say that Send Voices RBWM would love to be a part of that. We obviously speak for all of the parents and carers of children and young people who have SEN from 0 to 25 years. So that would be really great to be involved in.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add? No? Nope. Okay, thanks for that. So next item was on the health and wellbeing strategy, and there was some information that was sent out around that. I actually had kind of some comments on it. So in a health and wellbeing strategy, the mortality rates for disabled people are more than twice that for non-disabled people. The more your daily activities are limited, the higher the mortality rate. But these, you know, these are not perfectly correlated. There are things to be learnt that can address that. And the latest Learning Disabilities Mortality Review, which was commissioned by NHS England, published last year, showed that people with learning disabilities or autism in England are dying almost 20 years younger than the rest of the population. There has been a slight increase in life expectancy to 62.5 years, but those with learning disabilities and autism still experience significant inequalities. 39% of their deaths were classed as avoidable in 2023, which is almost twice as high as the general population. In 2023, the most common causes of avoidable death in people with learning disabilities were flu, pneumonia, cancers of the digestive tract, and heart disease. 37% of deaths of people with learning disabilities involve some form of delay in care or treatment, and 28% reported instances where diagnosis and treatment guidelines were not met. Now, obviously, this is about mortality and this is about kind of medical care, but I think in terms of the health and wellbeing strategy, again, having the voices of people directly affected by this is really important in the consultation stage. And I know in other matters, Vicky, you have talked about the importance of having people with learning disabilities actually actively engaged in consultation and not just have people speak on their behalf. So, you know, I hope that the opportunities are seized to ensure that this strategy is developed with as many voices of people with different impairments or disabilities as possible, so we can live healthy lives, have great well-being, but also, you know, that there is actually a commercial aspect to this. If you help people live healthily and they get out and they're socially engaged, it stimulates economic growth. Councillor Del Campo, did you?
Yeah, no, agree with everything you said. You know, you mentioned about the mortality data, that very much is relevant. You know, I've seen the latest draft of the strategy, and it is very data focused, evidence based. So that data is all relevant. So I would ask that you send that over to me, and I'll make sure it's reflected in there. I think in the last meeting of this forum, we talked about getting people onto those task and finish groups. I'm not sure if that's happened. Do we know that's happened? I think that's an action that we need to follow up. Ellen's got a hand up, so she might be able to answer that.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen.
So the task and finish group phase has kind of happened. It was very kind of looking at some very kind of high level priorities. So there's going to be kind of other opportunities for kind of more engagement when there's going to be more we can actually kind of get into. But that phase, I think, was kind of quite a short phase. I did pass on the details to Chad of the members of the forum who'd expressed an interest in getting involved. But I think that kind of happened, that they've kind of changed direction from those task and finish groups. They're now looking at other ways of engagement.
Yeah, that was yeah, quite disappointing that a number of people had said they'd be interested in participating, and the impression given was that people would have some form of engagement in that task, in the task and finish group. So it just kind of disappeared, and yeah, it is disappointing. Yes, Catherine.
Yeah, no, I believe there are working groups going forward. I might have used the wrong terminology, but certainly, you know, that now the work has been scoped out, there are groups taking that work forward. So, sorry, something in my throat. I'm happy to take that up with the Director of Public Health, excuse me, to see, you know, what future involvement there can be.
Yeah, thank you. Any other points on health and wellbeing? Yes, Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. The Borough commissions the advocacy people to support our residents who have additional needs. So maybe they would be a good point of call to speak to get customer engagement with regards to the health and wellbeing strategy, and to actually get the voices of the people who we're talking about heard firsthand.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know the engagement with different groups and people by the advocacy people, and yeah, how people get involved with that.
So I know that Caroline Waits leads on the Learning Disability Partnership Board, so she would be a good point of call to start with, and see which other colleagues she works with in the organisation to kind of cascade that out across the borough.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, so yeah, the Learning Disability Partnership Board and the Speaking Out group that's part of that have been really useful for we kind of trying to make sure we're engaging them on, particularly on things like this, where there's you know, a really clear importance of getting the views of people with different experiences. And we did recently had a community safety survey, and for that I produced an easy read version of the survey, which was shared with the Learning Disability Partnership Board, and through that we had several responses returned back through the Speaking Out group, which was fantastic. So I would be quite keen to do something similar to this and make sure that we're getting the voices, and that'd be something that if we kind of manage to get that that version produced, share that with kind of any other groups that might find it useful as well.
Thank you. Sorry. Robin Pemberton commented on the Autism Partnership, saying the last effective Autism Partnership Board happened in September 2021, and the RBWM Autism Strategy expired in 2022. So thank you for that comment. Returning to the health and wellbeing strategy, I think the words that Kirsty has introduced, which I'm really happy about, is intersectionality. I know through my own health, when there are things in my health that I'm offered some support with, there isn't the ability to access that because of my disabilities. And it's really quite frustrating that it seems that there is a kind of one size fits all approach to some health issues which don't take account of disabilities. So Kirsty.
In terms of health and well-being, I just wanted to point out that the disability swimming sessions that are held at Braywick Leisure Centre are really, really helpful for a lot of our parents. We quite often hear of how it helps not just with socialization, but also improves the mental health of the people who attend those sessions as well. If it's possible, is there any way we could maybe expand the sessions to other leisure centres as well, or perhaps different kinds of sports, but just to maintain that same element of helping with the mental health and well-being?
Thanks, Kirsty. Yeah, Jit.
Hi, Kirsty. I believe that there is a session over at Newlands Girls' School, and that's actually run by Stand Up for Autism. You can reach out to me separately about this, and I can give you further details about all of this stuff.
Thanks. And Councillor Price?
It's when you're looking at the strategy, are you going to look at what other countries have done? So I read about the Scandinavian countries that have done fall clinics in terms of preventing falls, so teaching people how to fall. So I know when I was much, much younger and did judo, you learned how to fall and roll fall. I wouldn't do that now because it wouldn't be, but that's what I should do if I tripped and fall. And they say that not only is it improved the quality of life for the individual people, but it's actually saved the healthcare service a lot of money on coping people who've then got broken wrists and broken arms from falling not in the right way. So I just put that out.
Thank you. I still roll when I fall. I've fallen about 5 times this year, and it's still instinct from my judo training. So, any other points?
So Councillor Price is interested in said that. So I'm working on the over 60s activities week in October, and part of that is finding your feet campaign, and that's linked to British judo. So I'm trying to educate individuals on how to, when you are falling, how to land safely and correctly. It's interesting you say that because that's not my, I'm working on it.
I guess with your wrestling, you've got, again, a lot of experience of falling and landing safely.
Yeah, I think it's just part of it. So if you know how to land, then you can break a fall. And I think part of it is not a lot of us are actually ever taught how to actually land from a fall, because you're never expected to fall. But if you are, you know how to land. That's the educational piece.
Thanks. So again, I'm hoping that this will just come back to future meetings. So under any other business, what I had. Ellen, I know you had a piece about the consultation process.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to just draw the forum's attention to the fact that over the summer we adopted a new consultation policy. So that's available on our the external website, and just kind of talks about our kind of approach and the process that we have internally about how we're using consultations, and kind of as part of the kind of rollout on that internally as well, we're going to be doing things to make sure that colleagues are aware of forums and other groups such as this that they can kind of go to when they're developing strategies or developing other pieces of work, and kind of really promote the importance of engagement and using the kind of the lived experience and the insights of various kind of groups like this.
Thanks, Ellen. I've now remembered what my AOB was. So at a previous meeting, we talked about tracking actions to ensure that things don't just drop off the minutes. And although I think with holidays and things like that, it hasn't quite worked out, Ellen and actually I have kind of gone through and looked at previous minutes. So those things included website accessibility, which was brought to the March meeting. So Simon Arthur talked about real user feedback was essential. We did discuss engagement, so it would be good, not now, but it would be good to know when that will happen. The 3-hour time limit on on-street town centre parking. I think we were going to feed back to Neil Walter on that, and I don't know if that happened. No, so that's something to follow up on. Yes, Ellen.
Yes, I did follow up with Neil. He said he hadn't received any feedback from residents about that parking at the moment. So yes, he hasn't had any feedback on it, but they'll obviously kind of keep an eye on that longer term.
Yeah, because it's actually it's affected me today because I turn up early to the meeting to kind of prepare and stuff like that. And depending on what time the meeting ends, I could find myself with a ticket. We also, on the parking, we also suggested if the council could explore ground floor parking at Hines Meadow, particularly when the Nicholson redevelopment is happening. So I don't know if maybe I can write a note to, again, the parking team to ask if that could be explored. But we will have better tracking, which will pull out as a separate item in future agendas. I know, Kirsty, you had a couple of points, and I did, before we discuss it, I did raise this as something that we will come back to talk about at future meetings. But if you'd like to outline what they are for the rest of the membership.
Thank you. Firstly, it was about how councils are, or how our council is going to help and support families whose children are having to be home educated. When I say this, I mean not electively. Some of the children are suffering from URSA, or some children are in that middle zone between they're not disabled enough to go to a SEND school, but they're also too disabled to go to a mainstream school. And what we're finding is that a lot of our parents are dealing with financial issues, mental health issues. They don't have the support that they need. So it was just to ask how the council could get involved with helping on that side. And then the second point was, as being part of the armed forces community, there's something that I see quite often, which is the SEND families who battle with EHCP transfers. A lot of the time, their children are having to wait over 6 months to be able to access a new school in a new borough, just purely because of the delay of the transfer of the EHCP from this borough into another borough. So I just wanted to find out if there was any way we could have a chat with the council and see how we can fix that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty. I'm not sure of the best mechanism for doing that. I'm guessing it will go through Achieving for Children. But yeah, we'll follow up on this after the meeting and kind of suggest how we can try and take this forward. Does anybody else have any AOB? Yes, Councillor Price.
It's at the last meeting, I said how helpful it was when a paper was produced for an item rather than a verbal presentation, even if it's brief, because then you know the context and you can start thinking about it beforehand. So I welcome those that we did have papers for, but I noticed we again had some that didn't, and I'd just like to urge, if it's at all possible, no matter how short, it just helps prepare rather than have to think on your feet.
Thank you. Yeah, actually in the updated terms of reference, we talk about the expectation that reports will be paper and that they will be submitted 6 days in advance, because not only does it enable those papers to be sent out in one format, but if people need different formats, then it enables democratic services to comply. But yes, we're trying, by putting it in the terms of reference, to address that. Is there any other AOB? Yes, Dennis.
Basically, at the last meeting, I raised the question about the rollout of digital voice. And I learned on Friday that it actually started in our area. And at the meeting I was at on Friday, there were two good examples of how communication hasn't been particularly good. One was that there was a lady who requires assistance in the installation of the new equipment. I talked to her pendant care supplier and had been assured she was okay, but hadn't realised that she needed to register with her landline provider to get assistance on the installation. The second issue that came out, you have to register as a vulnerable customer. I mean, I hate that expression, but that's the one that's used in the documentation. So anybody who needs assistance on the installation, whatever the disability or need for assistance, has to contact their landline provider. The second thing was that there was a lady at the meeting who didn't have a mobile. She is entitled to register with her landline provider as landline dependent, and the providers are required to put in place special provisions for people who don't have mobiles, or alternatively don't have a mobile signal in their area. And again, she wasn't aware of that opportunity. I think we need to somehow publicise it, because if the rollout has started, there could be a lot of people in our borough who fail to get the support and assistance they're entitled to, and that the providers have signed up to provide. And to be fair to BT, Virgin, Phone, and all the other providers, if we don't tell them we need the assistance, then they can't be expected to provide it. So I'm not sure how we can get the message out, but I think it's an important message.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I think something did go out in a resident newsletter.
I did raise it with our comms team after the meeting. I'm not sure kind of what's gone out, but I did raise it with them, and they said they'd kind of pass it on to the rest of the team. So I can try and find out if we did send anything.
I haven't seen anything in the sort of weekly email that comes out. And again, it's difficult because until I hadn't been able to see on the website when it was going to affect our area. So on Friday morning, I emailed the BT press office. I know from experience, the press office are usually more willing to talk than customer services. And the gentleman from the press office came back in a couple of hours to say, yes, they were starting, and confirmed the telephone numbers for BT, PlusNet, EE, etc. So those numbers are readily available, but we somehow have to get our residents to take action. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I wasn't actually familiar with the term telephone dependent. So again, that's useful to know. So maybe we can try and speak to the comms team again, happy to help on that, or introduce Dennis to help on that. I announced a little while ago that I was going to be moving house this year, quite far down the M4 to Bristol. Actually at the last meeting I got home, and there was an offer on my house which I accepted, and 3 days later my offer on the house was accepted, and so the legal process has been taking its course over the last 3 months, and so it's likely to be my last meeting here. I'm happy to stay involved, certainly to the next meeting, and ensure that any knowledge that I have is handed over. But I have to say, so the forum's been going 35 years. I've been involved in about a quarter of that time, and I've met loads of really wonderful people, councillors, RBWM officers, all sorts of people. And yeah, last week I attended my last Visit Windsor Accessible Tourism meeting, and said how how I've really enjoyed trying to contribute to improvements around accessibility in whatever ways. So this won't be the last you see of me, but yeah, I will be leaving you in good hands, and thank you to everybody who has contributed in whatever way. I have really valued your insight and your guidance, and just thanks very much. The next meeting, I think, is the 4th.
First week is
Okay. Sorry? First, okay. Angela, you have your hand raised.
Lisa, I would just like to say on behalf of the forum, we will miss you so much. Your dedication to analysis and research has been inspiring, and we wish you well, and I hope you don't lose touch. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. Councillor Del Campo, did you?
Yeah, Angela beat me to it. I was going to say thank you as well. When you mentioned handing over your knowledge, I thought, well, that's no mean feat. We might need a few years for you to do that, but thank you so much. You will very much be missed. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't pass on all of the 4 years of knowledge on national planning policy framework and all of that stuff, because hopefully things will be better in the next borough local plan. So anyway, so the next meeting is on the 1st of December here, 11 o'clock, and on Zoom, and